Hi, I'm Shashank Bhargav, and you're listening to Three Things, the Indian Express news show. In this episode, we talk about a lynching which took place at the Golden Temple in Amritsar. We also talk about the Income Tax Department conducting searches at the houses of 3 people who are closely associated with the Samajwadi Party chief Akhilesh Yadav. But first, we talk about the Election Commission, which is the autonomous body in charge of conducting free and fair elections in India. Last month, the Election Commission received a letter from an official of the Law Ministry. This letter, based on what it said and what happened later, was completely unprecedented. This matter has, in fact, raised serious concerns about the Election Commission's independence. To talk about what this letter said and how the Commission responded to it, Indian Express's Ritika Chopra, who broke this story, joins us now to talk about it. So, Ritika, the entire controversy started with this letter that the Election Commission received. What exactly did this letter say?
The Election Commission received a letter from the Law Ministry. The letter is dated 15th of November, is what we've learned. And this letter wasn't addressed directly to the Commission, it was addressed to an officer of the Commission, stating that the Principal Secretary to PM will be chairing a meeting on the Common Electoral Roll and that he expects the Chief Election Commissioner to be present.
It said he expects.
Yeah, so the word expects is mentioned, is what we have learned. And this meeting was to be held on the 16th, or rather was held on the 16th, and the letter arrived a day before. Of course, the language and the tone of the letter, of course, is very odd, given that it's a well-established and a well-known practice that it's the officers of the government or the executive which call on the commission. And the commission doesn't really attend any meetings that have been called by the executive or officers of the government. So the tone of the letter, the content of the letter actually kind of created a bit of a stir in the commission.
And I also just want to mention this to our listeners that this particular meeting was supposed to take place online. But, Ritika, considering that something like this usually doesn't happen, what was the reaction of the Election Commission and the Chief Election Commissioner to this letter?
So what we were told is that the Chief Election Commissioner wasn't happy about this, given that the letter states that the Principal Secretary of PM not only will be chairing the meeting, he expects him to be present in the meeting. So we're told that he conveyed his displeasure about the tone of the letter to the legislative secretary. And although this, from what I understand, this wasn't done formally, it was done informally. And the Chief Election Commissioner has learned to have told them that he will not be attending this meeting, which is being chaired by the Principal Secretary to PM. So that was the immediate reaction of the Chief Election Commissioner to that letter.
So he says that he will not attend this meeting. But did he attend this meeting?
So what we found out was that while Mr. Chandra did not attend the meeting, which Principal Secretary to PM was chairing, and we understand that this meeting was also attended by officers of the Law Ministry, senior officers of the Election Commission, and if I'm not wrong, maybe also attended by Cabinet Secretary. He did not attend this meeting, but immediately after this meeting via video conference was over, we learned that the 3 election commissioners then, after the officers had left, then interacted with the Principal Secretary to PM, which we are told is that one should not see this as a meeting called by the Principal Secretary to PM. This was just an interaction after the formal meeting was over between the commissioners and the Principal Secretary to PM.
And do we know what was discussed during this meeting?
The agenda of this interaction was basically Common Electoral Roll. This, I should mention, is a manifesto promise of the Bharatiya Janata Party. They made this promise in their manifesto just before the 2019 Lok Sabha election. Having said that, this idea is not new. It has been proposed and endorsed by the Law Commission as well. The Election Commission also has in the past written letters to the government proposing that there should be a common electoral roll. So just for the benefit of the listeners, I mean, what do you mean by a common electoral roll? It's the idea is that instead of having a separate voters list for Lok Sabha and Assembly elections, which is prepared by the Election Commission of India, and a separate voter list for local body elections like your panchayat elections or municipal elections, instead of having two agencies prepare rolls separately, why can't we have one electoral roll which could be used for the Lok Sabha elections, assembly elections, municipal body elections, and panchayat elections? I mean, the argument here given in support of a common electoral roll is that this will help the government save a lot of resources and money. So this is something that the Bharatiya Janata Party had promised in its manifesto, that the Prime Minister has been recently talking about in his speeches. So that is what we were told was discussed.
Okay, so you mentioned the letter, its tone, it's saying that the official expects the chief election commissioner to be there, and the fact that this informal meeting did take place. So what are the major concerns that all this raises?
So first, of course, is the question that can the government do this? Can they send out a letter asking heads of the constitutional authority to attend the meeting that they are chairing? No, they can't. And because there are several court judgments which reaffirm what is already provided in our constitution, that the election commission is a constitutional authority. It is a constitutional authority so that it is completely independent of the executive, and that its day-to-day functioning is insulated from interference from the executive, from the government of the day. That's provided for in the constitution, but the commission, at least since TN Seshan's time, has tried to maintain that image of independence, maintain that perception of independence as well, because the perception and image, especially in the case of the election commission, is very important, because that is how people trust the commission to conduct elections freely and fairly. If for whatever reason people are suspicious of election commission's independence, that would kind of defeat the purpose of conducting elections freely and fairly, because people may not have faith in the election results that the commission eventually declares.
Yeah, they could end up thinking that the election commission is in cahoots with the government, so they won't trust the results of an election, or even end up thinking, what's the point of me voting when the entire system is working unfairly anyway?
Right, exactly. So that's precisely why election commissioners for decades now, I mean, tend to protect this. Not only are they independent, but they also protect the image and perception like a hawk. That is why it's considered that crucial, which is why the three election commissioners always maintain an arm's length distance from the executive, which is why the commissioners never attend a meeting of the government. If the government has some queries or wants to know the views of the commission, they either they seek time from the commissioners, go over to their office and meet them, or maybe write letters and clarifications can be given in writing. This is not to say that the commissioners have zero interaction with the government. Obviously, there is interaction between the election commission and the law ministry. The law ministry is the nodal ministry, sort of the administrative ministry of the election commission, because it's the law ministry which the election commission's budget comes from the law ministry. So a lot of this administrative stuff, all electoral reforms that are proposed by the EC, there is communication between EC and law ministry, and to some extent with the home ministry, because of the fact that the EC needs security forces around the time of elections. But again, in all of these interactions, the EC can summon officers of the home ministry, law ministry to come meet them and, ask, but it doesn't work the other way around, given the stature of the three election commissioners. But like I mentioned, this is not to say that the EC has never spoken to the PMO or the Prime Minister in the past. I mean, there have many commissioners in the past have written letters to the Prime Minister whenever they felt there's been a bottleneck or some kind of a hurdle in something they want to get, any of their proposals that they want implemented. But then that is something that the EC has done on its own. So this is not, again, the Prime Minister or Principal Secretary to PM calling the EC for a meeting.
So have we ever seen this happen in the past then?
From what we know, this is very unusual, very rare. This is why the former chief election commissioners that we spoke to for a story, to understand whether, I don't know, maybe are we overreacting to this, but 5 out of the 6 commissioners that we spoke to with the exception of Mr. Gopalaswamy, 5 election commissioners told us that, look, this should not have happened. While the first thing that Mr. Chandra did was to refuse attending that meeting, while that was the right call, some of them said, we don't understand, when you refuse to attend the meeting, then why even have that informal interaction right after the meeting? Because senior officers of the commission are trained to brief the government on electoral reforms. They process these files. They are very much familiar. So usually is no room for confusion. But if there is any clarification to be sought, that can be done in writing. But for what it, at least like Mr. O.P. Rawat, who's also former chief election commissioner, said that to meet them after this meeting seems a little incongruous. It almost seems like they first said no and then they joined eventually, so that they don't want this to be the source of any displeasure. So he felt that maybe the commission should just put its foot down, asked its officers to attend the meeting, and then leave it at that. Of course, the senior officers of the commission that we spoke with to understand why this happened, they have told us that electoral reforms have, at least the ones that were passed by the cabinet recently, some of these reforms have been pending for decades. And we felt that we are going to skip this bureaucratic red tape. And if they want to speak to us, we will go speak to them about this issue. And this interaction helps with expeditious disposal of these proposals, then so be it. But the former chief election commissioners feel that the fact that the information about such a meeting is out, that just hurts and erodes EC's independence, or at least the perception of its autonomy and independence.
Now, the thing to note is that the Election Commission's independence has come under question a number of times in the recent past. Several political parties have criticized it for acting on the behest of the party in power. In this regard, Ritika gives the example when in 2017, the Election Commission had announced the dates for the Himachal Pradesh Assembly elections.
The practice is always to announce elections together for states whose assemblies are expiring around the same time, maybe even in a couple of months of each other or a few months of each other, again, to save time and resources. You can't have like several elections in a year, so you might as well hold elections of 2 to 3 states, the term of whose assemblies are expiring, like I mentioned, within a few months of each other. So you announce elections together. But interestingly, what happened, and this was when Mr. A.K. Jyoti was the chief election commissioner, he did not announce dates for Gujarat along with Himachal Pradesh. In fact, there was a gap of 14 days. This did not go down well with the opposition. They felt that dates for the Gujarat assembly elections were announced late, and in order to help the ruling party in the state, which is the BJP, that this gave them enough time to announce sort of SOPs, and that disturbed the level playing field and tipped the scale in favor of the ruling party.
The Election Commission, in its defense, had said that Gujarat had experienced floods, so according to the state officials, they needed more time to prepare. But the opposition parties didn't really buy this excuse. Another example of this, from this year itself, was during the West Bengal Assembly elections, which were fiercely contested between the BJP and the TMC. This was the time when COVID cases around the country were rapidly rising.
This was right ahead of, just before the peak of the second wave, and parties like the Congress and Trinamool Congress did urge the commission to suspend campaigning because there were people gathering in large numbers at rallies. But the Election Commission didn't, and ironically, it only announced cancellation of campaigning, I think maybe an hour or two after the Prime Minister cancelled all of his rallies. And again, that timing did hurt the commission. And again, it came under attack from political parties, with parties alleging that, look, the commission announced cancellation of campaigning only after the PM cancelled his rallies. Whether this was coincidence or not, but the timing of their announcement coming right after the PM's announcement didn't really make the commission look that great. And another example was during the 2019 elections, there were a lot of complaints that were piling up. These are complaints of model code violation against Prime Minister Narendra Modi and Amit Shah, who was at that time the president of the BJP. And the opposition felt that the commission was just sitting on these complaints and didn't have any meetings on these complaints for over 2 weeks. And it's only after the Supreme Court's intervention that they started disposing of these complaints. And in each of these complaints, they gave a clean chit to the Prime Minister and Mr. Amit Shah. And that the opposition felt was unfair given that the Prime Minister's utterances were in violation of the guidelines of the Commission. Interestingly, we later found out when we had broken these stories that in each of those 4-5 cases, there was one election commissioner who objected to the clean chit being given to the Prime Minister as well as Mr. Amit Shah. At least he was of the opinion that both of them were violating the Model Code of Conduct and the Election Commission's guidelines with regard to using the army for political campaigning. So, yeah, these are some of the instances when the Commission has been attacked and its independence questioned by political parties recently.
And next, we talk about a lynching which took place in Amritsar on Saturday. A man was beaten to death at the Golden Temple in Amritsar after being accused of a sacrilege attempt. This happened after he picked up the sacred sword inside the temple. The incident has once again brought sacrilege at the center stage of Punjab politics. To talk about this incident, joining us is Indian Express's resident editor from the Chandigarh newsroom, Manraj Grewal Sharma. So Manraj, this man was lynched at the Golden Temple in Amritsar on Saturday. What exactly had he been accused of?
See, it was around, I think the evening prayers were going on in the temple. These are held in the Sanctum Sanctorum.
Sanctum Sanctorum is the main inside of the temple?
Yeah, inside the temple where the holy book Guru Granth Sahib is kept, and they were reading the evening prayers at that time. I think this is a little before 6. And there is a lot of rush at that time. It's a very heavily crowded place. It's a very heavily visited shrine. And since yesterday was Saturday evening, the rush tends to be more than the usual, more than during the week. So this person climbed over the railing, and it happened in split seconds. He tried to grab hold of a Siri Saab, they call it, which is the sword, the ceremonial sword lying next to the holy book. And then he was caught by the Sevadars. Sevadars are deputed by the Shiromani Gurudwara Prabandhak Committee, which looks after the Sikh shrines, including the Golden Temple. So that is what we saw. That is what happened.
And so he picked up the ceremonial sword and then the Sevadars tried to stop him?
Yes, they caught hold of him, and you can see a couple of people raining blows on him. And then I assume they dragged him out. First, he was taken to a room, and after that, he was brought out from the room in a wheelchair. That is what our reporter says. Then he was taken to the administration office of the SGPC. And after that, a lot of people sat in dharna outside the office demanding his custody. And what happened next was that body was brought out and placed outside.
So sometime between him being captured and the officials taking him into this room and questioning him, he passed away.
Yeah. So interestingly, the police were also there in plain clothes. So there is a police officer who was there, and we are told that the police officer interrogated him. The SGPC officials interrogated him, questioned him, as in about where he was from or whatever, and they claimed that he did not reveal any information. So it's a very unfortunate event that has happened.
And what are the kind of things that we have now heard from political leaders about this incident?
See, the political leaders are curiously silent on the issue of lynching per se. So all the reactions that we have got are to the attempted sacrilege. So be it the Shiromani Akali Dal, whose patron, Mr. Prakash Singh Badal, 5-time Chief Minister, he released a video saying that it's a very sad incident and we should probe the conspiracy. We should get to the bottom of it because it doesn't seem to be a lone wolf case. And how it has hurt the sentiments of the community.
ਇਹ ਅਨਬੇਅਰੇਬਲ ਹੈ ਔਰ ਇਹਦੇ 'ਚ ਇਹਦੀ ਬੜੀ ਕੋਈ ਵੱਡੀ ਸਾਜ਼ਿਸ਼ ਹੋ ਸਕਦੀ ਹੈ। ਇਹ ਸਾਜ਼ਿਸ਼ ਨੂੰ ਬੇਨਕਾਬ ਕਰਨਾ ਬਹੁਤ ਜ਼ਰੂਰੀ ਹੈ।
Arvind Kejriwal has also said something in the same tenor, that it has hurt people a lot. It's hurt the sentiments of the people. We should get to the bottom of it, get to the root of it. BJP has also said that very sad incident, and we should find out who's behind it, if there are forces behind it. So it's very strange. The Congress Chief Minister himself has said that it's the same set lines that everybody is trotting out, condemning the attempted sacrilege, calling it very painful, and keeping quiet about the lynching.
And incidents of sacrilege are not new to the state. In fact, we have seen a number of these incidents even in the recent past, right?
Absolutely. So, in fact, 4 days back, there was a man who flung a gutka. Now, gutka is a compilation of holy verses into the Sarovar, the pond outside the Golden Temple, pond around the Golden Temple. And he was overpowered and he was handed over to the police. So, in the Golden Temple itself, in a similar incident, the person was handed over to the police. He was not lynched. And similarly, there are many such incidents have taken place. It started in 2015, and before the incidents of sacrilege were quite unheard of in Punjab. They were not so commonplace, but this started in 2015, and there were a number of such incidents, small incidents in little villages, far-flung villages, but nobody was killed. The culprits or whoever were handed over to the police.
And I mean, these incidents of sacrilege have played a major role in Punjab politics. It was such incidents and cases around it that eventually led the Akali Dal to lose elections in Punjab because they were accused of not taking enough action against them. And more recently, it was Congress State Chief Navjot Singh Sidhu who had raised this issue again, targeted Amrinder Singh, and then we saw Amrinder Singh eventually leave his post of the Chief Minister.
Absolutely. Sidhu made a big deal out of it. On Baisakhi, Sidhu went to the place where the torn pages of Guru Granth Sahib were found. And he said, a chief minister who cannot do justice for his guru, what can he do for the people? So he set that tone, and then more people joined hands with him, more ministers who were disgruntled for other reasons, not because of sacrilege. It was mainly because of governance issues. But then everything came together and it led to the ouster of Captain Amrinder.
Okay, so now this incident, which has been captured on CCTV, has happened only a few months before the elections are supposed to take place in Punjab. Do authorities suspect anything particularly suspicious about this?
It's just the timing is, of course, very suspect, and it also puts a lot of pressure. The timing, the place, it could very well be lone wolf, mentally challenged persons. But from the latest CCTV footage that has been accessed by our reporter, he was in the premises of the Golden Temple since the morning, 11:40. So it wasn't as if he had just come in there. It's rather unfortunate because it's again taken the center stage in Punjab, because there are a lot of other things that are wrong: misgovernance, corruption, a lack of jobs, agriculture is in a crisis. But again, religion has taken the center stage. And this is such an issue where it kind of, the parties are forced to take a stand because it's a very emotive issue.
Now, shortly after this recording yesterday, two things came to light. One was that the police have booked the man who was killed at the Golden Temple for allegedly committing sacrilege. And he has also been booked in an attempt to murder case. The other major development was that another young man was beaten to death in a village in Kapurthala for an alleged sacrilege attempt at a Gurdwara. To know more about this case, you can find a link to it in today's episode description. And in the end, we talk about UP politics. Ahead of the Uttar Pradesh elections that are scheduled to take place in a few months, the Income Tax Department on Saturday conducted searches at the houses of a Samajwadi Party leader and 3 others who are considered close to the Samajwadi Party president Akhilesh Yadav. In this segment, Indian Express's Asad Rahman, who reports on UP politics, joins us to talk about the searches and the allegations that Akhilesh Yadav has made against the BJP in response.
The Income Tax Department on Saturday conducted searches at 4 places in 4 different cities of Uttar Pradesh. And the searches were against one Samajwadi Party leader and 3 other businessmen who are considered close to Samajwadi Party President Akhilesh Yadav. So these raids were conducted in Mau district, where Rajiv Rai, who's the national spokesperson and national general secretary of the Samajwadi Party, the searches by the IT were conducted at his house on Saturday morning. And three other locations, three other businessmen who were considered close to Akhilesh Yadav, and one of them was his officer on special duty when Akhilesh Yadav was the chief minister of UP. So raids were conducted at these four places in Mainpuri, Agra, and in Mau and in Lucknow.
And what kind of reaction did we see from the Samajwadi Party after these searches were conducted?
So after these searches were conducted at the four locations in UP, Samajwadi Party President Akhilesh Yadav immediately held a press conference in Raebareli, where he was scheduled to hold his Vijay Rath Yatra. And in very straightforward terms, Akhilesh said that the BJP is copying the trends set by the Congress, which is to intimidate opposition leaders using IT and other agencies of the central government. And he said that his party leader, Rajiv Rai, has nothing to hide and that he's just being targeted because the BJP is scared of losing the election in UP, which is due very soon.
Okay, so this happened on Saturday, but then on Sunday, Akhilesh Yadav made more allegations against the BJP, specifically targeting Chief Minister Yogi Adityanath. Could you talk about what these allegations were?
Akhilesh Yadav on Sunday held a press conference at his party headquarters in Lucknow, and he has made very serious allegations against UP Chief Minister Yogi Adityanath, saying that phones of Samajwadi Party Chief Akhilesh Yadav and other leaders who are contacting him or are associated with the Samajwadi Party, and that their phones are being tapped, and that Chief Minister Yogi Adityanath listens to the conversations every evening.
हमारे जितने भी फोन हैं समाजवादी पार्टी के कार्यालय के या हमारे संबंधित जितने लोग भी हैं उनके मोबाइल को सुना जा रहा है, सबको लिसनिंग पे लगाया हुआ है और मुख्यमंत्री खुद शाम को कुछ की रिकॉर्डिंग सुनते हैं.
This is not the first time that Akhilesh has leveled allegations of snooping against the current UP government. A year ago, he had alleged that an official of the local intelligence unit, which is a police's department, was found in his press conference at the party headquarters, and he was there snooping for Chief Minister Yogi Adityanath.
And have we seen just the Samajwadi Party react to these searches and make allegations, or other opposition parties have reacted to this as well?
None of the other opposition parties have actually reacted to the searches except for Akhilesh Yadav's allies like Om Prakash Rajbar, who heads the SBSP party, which is a party for backward castes in UP. But other than that, most opposition leaders have till now kept quiet. The prominent opposition leaders in UP have kept quiet on the searches done by the Income Tax Department.
You were listening to Three Things by The Indian Express. Today's show was written and produced by me, Shashank Bhargav, and was edited and mixed by Suresh Pawar. If you like the show, then do subscribe to us wherever you get your podcasts. You can also recommend the show to someone you think will like it, share it with a friend or someone in your family. It's the best way for people to get to know about us. You can tweet us at Express Podcasts and write to us at podcast@indianexpress.com.